Have you ever found yourself reaching for something, anything, to dull the ache of life's messiness? Maybe it's work, food, social media, or the need to be endlessly productive. Well, what if the path to true freedom isn't about trying harder, but surrendering more deeply? Hi, friends. I'm Gem Fadling, and this is the Unhurried Living Podcast, where we inspire you to rest deeper, live fuller, and lead better. Today, we're diving into The Fix with Ian Morgan Cron, a fresh and deeply personal look at the 12 steps, not just for those struggling with addiction, but for anyone longing for healing, joy, and a deeper connection with God. Stick around, because this conversation might just be the invitation your soul has been waiting for. We all have ways of coping with pain, some healthy, some not so much. Whether it's overworking, people-pleasing, or numbing out with food, entertainment, or busyness, we all look for fixes to ease the discomfort of life. But what if true healing comes not through willpower, but through surrender? Ian Morgan Cron knows this journey firsthand as a best-selling author, psychotherapist, Enneagram teacher, and Episcopal priest. Ian has spent years helping people uncover their true selves. In his latest book, The Fix, he shares how the 12 steps offer a powerful roadmap, not just for those in addiction recovery, but for anyone who longs for a more honest, grace-filled, and spiritually awake life. I am so happy to talk with Ian today about his personal journey, the deep wisdom of the 12 steps, and why this spiritual path might be exactly what your heart has been looking for. Let's dive in. Well, Ian Morgan Cron, I've been waiting for this to meet you. I've been kind of a fan, actually, from the sidelines. Of course, all of your Enneagram books, your podcast. I love your new book. I think you opened your arms so wide to all of us, and you had a sense of humor, which I think is just a pleasure. So anyway, thank you so much for saying yes.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be with you.
Yeah, I know our people are going to learn a lot from you. And I'd like to just dive right in.
Go.
You know, you really did take the 12 steps. You opened your arms wide to all of us who struggle pretty much with anything. And I'm wondering, though, if you could open our minds a little bit to the notion of our own unidentified or unaddressed addictions. We might not be calling them that. Struggles, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How would you open up our mind to the idea that this is for all of us?
Yeah. Well, we can just harken back to the early church mothers and fathers who spoke about attachments, right? And in fact, many of them moved into the deserts to free themselves from attachments. And now we, in a contemporary clinical setting, would use the word addiction instead of attachment. But that's what they were talking about, right? Now, an addiction is any unhealthy, compulsive relationship with a person, a behavior, or a substance that has mood-altering effects and negative consequences. Okay? So when we understand addiction in that sense, we all see that we are, all of us, addicted. It's the human condition. As Gerald May says, to be alive is to be addicted, and to be alive and addicted is to stand in need of grace. So this is our condition. And we may be on the mild end of the spectrum, or we may be at the severe end of the spectrum. But one thing is for sure is that all addictions diminish our relationship with God, with ourselves, and with others. And they are a principal source of problems in the spiritual life.
So good. I'm glad you brought up the word attachment, because that is maybe a more common word within the spiritual formation stream, let's say, or spiritual direction stream. And even in my own life, I am always trying to deal with myself at letting go of so many things, loving detachment or holy indifference, right? These are long-term spiritual practices of letting go of so many things.
And, we tend to compartmentalize. We like to think, okay, addicts, addiction. Well, those are
Right.
alcoholics or drug addicts. And then we may put another category around process addictions, like, oh, those are people who are addicted to porn or to sex or codependency or workaholism, right? But it's really it's all of us. Everyone is out looking for, hence the title of my book, right? The Fix.
Right.
Everyone, by virtue of their being humans, go looking for fixes for interior distress, right? And which, in the end, become a bigger problem for us than the problem the fix was trying to solve.
Right. I think we're starting to talk more and more about this. Before, I have to admit, for the first half of my life, I wasn't even aware of this conversation. I didn't even know or have language really for all the ways that I was trying to get, the fix. I love your title, Book here.
Yeah.
The double meaning, right?
Yes, the double meaning.
I love it. I'm so glad we're having more and more of these kinds of conversations, just bringing out into the light and verbalizing what's going on so that we might be in this process of transformation, which we're interested in. So I'm wondering if we could, right now, maybe let's hear a little bit of your story, because I know this is very personal and it is layered throughout the book. So maybe just an overview of your story and what led you to write this.
So I entered the rooms of recovery, 12-step recovery, my first time in 1987. I was a very young man. And it was for a battle with alcohol. And my friend Ashley Cleveland likes to say that she and I hail from alcoholic dynasties. That addiction doesn't run in my family; it gallops. Right? It's just a long series of people in my family who have struggled with addiction. Now, I oftentimes say that my first time in 12 steps, as I look back, I think I just audited the class. You know what I mean? I don't think I was taking it for credit. I was just sort of auditing, right? Now, fast forward decades, and in 2020, I had a relapse that I did not speak about publicly because, it's a private thing. And, I'm not under any obligation to divulge that sort of material to the general public. But it was really a wake-up moment. It was a profound spiritual moment. And I found myself back in the rooms of recovery, doing the 12 steps now for credit, not for as an audit. And what I discovered was, oh my gosh, these are spiritually brilliant. They really are brilliant. And they shouldn't be limited to people who are just who self-identify as addicts or alcoholics, right? Like, this is for everybody. This way of life, this design for living would improve the lives of everybody were they to submit themselves to this curriculum of the 12 steps. And I'm like, I got to go out and share that with people. And I waited 5 years, almost 5 years, because I was just doing my own work and just motoring along. But then one day I was like, nope, I think I need to share this story with people.
Yeah, I really love how you laced over and over and over throughout kind of the connection to the gospel process itself. Plus, you just kept reiterating. I'm going to use the word process again. There is a logical and dynamic process here, which we're going to get to. But I always love it, especially when an author writes from experience. This is in no way a technical book, although you do explain in depth each of the 12 steps. But as I said in the beginning, the humor that you bring in, the stories that you bring in, if you can say it was a fun read. I don't know if that's a fair way to say it, but I think you intended that because you are a self-described, I can't remember what you called yourself. Anyway, some kind of funny guy what did you call yourself? No, I don't
remember. I wrote it
like
and
a
I don't
jester
remember.
or something. Yeah, I know. Anyway.
Yeah.
I appreciated the sense of humor. That's all I want to say. Because it is, as you said, it is heavy in that we're talking about coming face to face with ourselves. So I'm wondering, what if you could, now that you've given us a little overview of your process of getting there, is there such a thing as just an overview of the steps? And again, maybe that intentional progression that you kept mentioning over and over that just seemed masterful to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, yes, and I'm going to do it very fast so we don't, for sake of efficiency. Um, uh, Steps 1 to 3, right? And
Yeah.
made a decision, or the first step is we admitted we were powerless over blank. Now you fill in the blank, your fix of choice. It could be food, it could be porn, it could be people pleasing, it could be substances, technology, porn, social media, approval, control. That's the one that everybody has. A relationship with our kids or with a partner, food, self-help, shopping, spending. I mean, I just want to remind people that we do live, according, especially, to Brene Brown, in the most addicted cohort in history. That's just a fact. We live in the most addicted cohort in history. People are rushing fixes everywhere, including people of faith, rushing to fixes other than their relationship with God, right? So I'm trying to normalize that conversation. So step 1, we admitted we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So now those first 3 steps really are about mending and deepening your relationship with God, even if you've been a Christian for 70 years. Like working these steps, they sound very simple, but when you get into the book and you get into the workbook, you begin to see, oh, wow, these are actually quite deep. These waters are very, very deep and very provocative in a wonderful way. So steps 1 to 3 are about mending and deepening your relationship with God, right? Now, let's move on. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Right? Now we're heading into turning our gaze inward. If step 1 to 3, we were gazing upward. Now we're going to gaze inward. Step 4 is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5 is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6 is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And 7 is humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. So what's happening here is mending and deepening your relationship with yourself, right? Now we're going to look outward. We've done inward, we've done upward. Now we're going to go outward. Steps 8 and 9 are made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And 9 is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So now we're mending and deepening our relationships at the social level, right, with other people. And then finally, in 10 through 12, these are called maintenance steps, right? So 10 is continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12 is, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to our fellow sufferers and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So in summary, right, mending our relationship with God, ourselves, others, and then cultivating a lifestyle that supports health and growth in each of those 3 domains of our lives moving forward.
See, to my ear, this sounds like a recipe for discipleship.
Yes, it is.
Right? I mean, the old-fashioned, I don't know if we use that word anymore, but I've been around a while.
Yeah.
We would have called this discipleship. And there were a couple of things that stood out to me. First of all, going back to when you first started answering the question, you said we are rushing to fixes. Now, our ministry is called Unhurried Living. So we have a bias for helping people realize they do have enough time to attend to that which matters most.
Mm-hmm. And
this rushing is a problem. Right? There could be a pacing at which you could take the time. You personally, Ian, had to pause to go back into rehab in 2020 and slow everything down and really take a look. Not everyone has to do that dramatic of a step, but knowing that you have the time to do this, I think, is at the beginning of the conversation, because not everyone wants to sink it, because this is a lot of work, what you just listed in less than 5 minutes, God, ourselves, and others. But it's really a lifelong invitation, right?
Yes. And listen, it's a lot of work. I wonder. I think um, our culture is always looking for hacks, and there's no hack in the spiritual life.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
Anyone who promises you a hack to some deeper intimacy with God um, is trying to fool you, right? It just doesn't exist. And so actually what I just articulated is the gospel. I mean,
Yeah.
the 12 steps are just the gospel operationalized, right? It's like, okay, well, what does the gospel look like when you start doing it on the ground? Well, attending to your relationship with God, yourself, and others, and then cultivating a lifestyle that makes health possible in each of those domains of your life on an ongoing basis. So, yes, when you do the steps the first time, you go through them in order and you try to do them as thoroughly as you can. The only one you got to get right 100% is this first step. It's the only one you have to do perfectly. You have to admit your powerlessness over whatever your set of attachments, addictions, destructive behaviors, ways of being in the world. You just have to admit that apart from some act of grace, by some act of God's transformational power, that you're just not going to be able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and make good on yourself, right? Like it's just good luck, right? And so, is it work? Yeah, I guess so. But after a while, what happens is these behaviors, these ways of this posture toward the world becomes not something you have to think about. It's just reflexive. So let me give you an example of this in the spiritual life, right? Like when you go to play golf, I'm not a golfer, but I know from golfers that, in order to be effective, you got to spend a lot of time on the driving range. Now, when you first try to learn how to golf, you're thinking about every single thing. Your grip, is my wrist straight? Are my knees properly bent? Is my backswing it's just a lot to think about. But after you've hit 10,000 balls, you're no longer thinking about the grip. You're no longer thinking, right? These things are now muscle memory. They've been right. It's the same thing in the spiritual life, right? So many things, if you practice, eventually just become instinctual and reflexive, right? That's what happens with the steps. I think about the steps every day, but eventually the numbers fall away. And now you're just kind of going, oh, time for step 5, step 4, step 2, step 1. And you're just kind of going through the day, applying these steps in all of your affairs.
Yeah, so good. I'm glad you pulled out that word work. I think I just threw that out. Probably because I'm a newbie to the steps. And so when I look at it, I go, wow. I mean, the work, especially walking through each one, I'm like that, it looked hard. Maybe because it was. But I do hear what you're saying. Really, what we're doing is we're cooperating with the process of transformation that God has us in, which as a spiritual director, I suppose that's our paradigm anyway, right? We are receptive. We are open.
Yes. This is very important. So it seems to me as a priest and as a therapist, being 64 and haven't been here a minute and observing people. Most people on the spiritual journey, or many, are really engaged in a program of reformation, meaning that they're well intentioned, but they're just trying to reform themselves on their own unaided willpower. So when I hear a Christian say to me something like, I'm trying to be a good Christian, I'm like, then you don't understand the gospel yet. You just don't understand yet, right? That you can try to fix yourself, and you might be able to make some marginal improvements here or there on the, I call it taping fruit to trees is what you're doing, right? It's like, I'm just trying, we're going to do these things. But you're still in charge, right? Now, to me, it seems the spiritual life is about transformation, not reformation. And transformation, deep interchange, happens when we give God consent to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And so things like, this is why practices like meditation are so important, right? It's a matter of just saying, yes, yes, to whatever it is that God wants to do. This is what I love about the 12 steps. It is so robust in its theology of grace, right? It's like, guess what? You can try and change yourself, and you have tried, but it's just not going to work until you let go, until you consent. And when you do, now you're no longer taping fruit to trees. Now what's coming up is it's actually happening organically. This is why we have all these organic pictures in scripture, right? Like vines and, trees and things like it's just naturally going to happen if you open up and allow God to have his way with you. He will do for you what you can't do for yourself. And that's transformation. And that's what the steps are trying to get you to do.
So good. I mean, there's just such a glorious message of grace in what you just said. Wonder if you could circle back around again. A minute ago, you said you need to get step 1 right. Can you talk a little bit more about that? It's powerlessness, right?
Yeah, we admitted we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. Yeah. And I just make the case that, in the book that, there's this, it is so paradoxical, and it's so in tune with the sort of upside down calculus of the gospel. That when we admit that we are powerless to save ourselves or to change ourselves, really, that then suddenly we paradoxically discover that we are being given a power. The moment you say, I can't, you can. I think I'll let you, right? To God. When you finally get to the point of being like, when you can find, I was with a guy recently, and he's a lovely man and a very, very, very successful guy. And he just so beautifully at one moment described his own condition as, I'm out of ammo. I'm out of ammo. I can't change my kids. I can't change my marriage. I can't change this. I can't change I'm powerless. Now, when you do that, suddenly the weight of the world falls off your shoulders, and you then are ready to fall into the arms of grace and say, God, thy will be done. Here I am. I'm ready. Help me not to get in the way, even with my good intentions, of what it is that you want to do in my life. And that is a glorious moment when you are suffused now with the kind of power that you were always looking for, but didn't know you had the kind of access to that we do.
And I can recognize that circling or cycling around that idea in different seasons of my life. Most recently, an enlivened sense of ambition that really drove me to a place of depletion.
Yes.
And thanks to God, right now I find myself in a place, I haven't said it that way, but I love that. I'm out of ammo. One of my first spiritual directors said, it's when your car runs out of gas, and then you find out that it doesn't run on gas anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't even know what to put in the car to make it go.
Yes. Yes.
And so I think there's many ways we can circle back around to that powerlessness that's actually really good. Another way to surrender, another way to let go, another way to open to God. I'm loving how much grace I'm hearing here.
Well, and this is where Paul gets to, right? I mean, this is when Paul says, I can't do the things I want to do, and I'm out of ammo. Like I have tried everything on my unaided willpower to create a holy and beautiful life, but I can't. I laugh. I always tell people I can't get out of bed in the morning and make it to the bathroom without tripping over 3 or 4 of my many attachments, and crazy self-destructive behaviors. And here's the thing. I love what you said in the beginning about the humor in the book. The word humor derives from the word, the same word from which we get humility. So it's not irreverent to have a sense of humor about the spiritual journey, right? Like humor must be part of it, right? That we must be able to gaze at our own interior condition and see it with all of the gravity that we need to see it, and also smile. Oh yeah, there I go again. Oh,
Oh, yeah.
There goes that. Oh, that narrative just launched. Okay. And then, you just,
Yeah.
so to me, humor actually is a very holy gift. It's a very sacred thing. It's also the thing the devil hates more than anything else. The devil hates to be laughed at. He likes to be taken very seriously.
Yeah. For me, I think humor, it's like it creates a crack almost into the softer self. I mean, why do really good comedians, why are they so successful? Because they're making us laugh, but they're also getting in there with some punches that we go, oh yeah, I see.
Yes.
But there's something, maybe there was something very disarming about the way you shared your own story. And I think the way you wrote made it possible for all of us not to feel judged or, like shoulded on.
Oh yeah. That's not my style.
I know. So what I'm saying, it was quite welcoming, but quite potent. Maybe that's a way to put it.
Yes.
I really appreciated that.
So glad.
Well, I was thinking about my former therapist many years ago. He told me, because when I was in therapy, I was ready. I was right in the middle of midlife. I was trying to just, let's deal with everything because I'm tired of living this way. It's not working anymore. The grand undoing. And he said, Gem, most people don't actually want healing because that pathway is so difficult. He said, most people are willing to settle for relief.
Yeah, symptom relief.
And I was like, oh, wow. Well, okay, I want more than that. I want healing. I want whatever God can do all the way down to the depths. Let's do it. I was like, let's go. So maybe could you talk about that for a minute? I mean, are our attachments or addictions then kind of a search for relief?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. So, and again, well, let me put it this way. This happens to me a lot, but recently I had a conversation with someone who said, oh, I read your book and I love your book. And I gave it to my brother who really has a drinking problem. And I said, okay, well, let's try to be more precise with our language. I said, your brother, I understand why you're saying that, but let me reframe it for you. Your brother actually doesn't have a drinking problem. Your brother has a drinking solution.
Mm.
And when I meet a workaholic, he said, I got a problem with how much I work. I go, no, your workaholism is your solution, not your problem. Right? So,
yeah.
And when you do that, what comes up, right? I should ask you, but what comes up is a kind of empathy and understanding and compassion. It's like, this isn't a problem. In your mind, it's your solution. So now the problem with any addiction, and we all have them, is that they end up becoming bigger problems than the problems they were trying to solve. Now you got two problems. Now you got the unaddressed problem, and the solution that you had come up to address it is now a problem, right? Now you're dancing with two problems. So in the 12 steps and in the spiritual life with attachments and addictions, I'm always like, look, we have to abstain long enough from this old solution, right? And turn our gaze toward the problem it was trying to solve. So what's your Enneagram type, Gem? I'm just curious.
7.
You're a 7. Okay. So let's say that your drug of choice, if you will, right, is the consumption of adventures, new ideas, fascinating stuff, taking on too much, right? Like just the gluttony, right? And understand that is a solution to a problem, right? I could do this with every Enneagram type, right? Like basically, your passion ends up becoming an addiction of kinds, right? So in that sense, it's like, well, in order for me to help you with that, we have to stop that and begin to turn our eyes toward what it is you're trying to solve, which is it's a way of dealing with your anxiety, your fear of painful feelings, your fear of distressing thoughts, the fear that you are unsupported and alone in the world, and that no one would. Yes, right.
I mean, that one is. When I found that out, it touched all the way down to my core.
Yes.
That I didn't feel supported.
Yes.
There was something missing, and I don't have it, and I'm not safe.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That was like the center.
And that gluttonous behavior became your solution. And then that
Yes.
gluttonous behavior became kind of an addiction, right?
Mhm.
An attachment. It's like, I don't know how else to be in the world, right?
Right.
And the reason I know that's true is if I just told you to stop it on your own unaided willpower, you wouldn't be able to. That has to be a work of God. And the way that we can begin to pull the rug out from underneath these addictions is by forming better attachment or healthier attachment to God's self and others. Because really, if you're an alcoholic, let's say, you have formed a relationship. It's a relationship, right? With a substance to heal the pain of a broken relationship with God, self, and others. And so we have to go back to the source of the problem, which is our feelings of alienation from ourselves, from those we love, those around us, and from God. And then what happens is you discover that, oh, wait a minute, just on its own, it has now rendered unnecessary your need for that substance, that behavior, or that relationship with the person. It's just no longer like, oh, I don't need to drink. I'm just like, why would I?
Ian, I am in the middle of this right now. Now, I just turned 61 a couple months ago. And so I've been around the tree a few times. I've done some work, but there's always another layer.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I keep bumping into that next layer. And actually, over the last handful of years, for lack of a better term, I'll call them dark nights. I feel like I've had a couple of seasons of darkness or a fog, whatever you want to call it. And I am perceiving that as this grace you're talking about, where God himself is quieting some things. Now, I've asked him, I've come to God and I've said, I was driven to the point of anxiety that I couldn't manage. And then I drove myself again to this place where I called it depletion.
Yes.
But once I got past this anxiety thing and then to depletion, that was another animal. And so things are just going very quiet. And so I have had to laugh at that, though, because every once in a while I go, maybe this is the peace I've actually prayed for. But to my 7 temperament, it feels like it's too quiet or it's too boring or it's not enough, because I'm always looking for that gravy. There's like, oh, where's the gravy for this? I don't see the sparkly gravy.
Right. Yeah.
But I've asked God for this, but living it out has been a process for me to grow accustomed to not needing gravy on everything. Right. And I'm still in it. I'm still in this process. It is getting a little easier on this go around the tree just because I'm familiar with this work in me. But I have to tell you, every once in a while, it does rise up like something's wrong. Something's wrong because there's not enough shiny.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. And this is why I think for all of us, right? Like, even if a person, like, let's say a listener's like, I don't have an addiction. There's like a kind of resistance here, right? I would just say, look, every Christian should go through the steps at least once. You should just do it. And by the way, you may discover that once you do, you're like, holy smoke, I'm going to like use this as a pattern of living going forward. But everyone should go through this process because it's just the gospel. It's just, you use the word discipleship, and I appreciate that that's sort of old school terminology that we don't use very much anymore. But it is a design for living that will tidy the house. Tidy the house.
I really picked up on that. Now, my closest friends are actually deeply embedded in AA and Al-Anon. I mean, they are sponsors. They've been deeply embedded in, and I've never gone through the steps myself, but I've learned so much from them by the way they live their life. The slogans, oh my goodness, the slogans.
Oh,
Keep your side of the street clean. I mean, one of my favorite
just the gospel.
And one of my favorite ones is, this might be good news.
Yes.
I mean, I have learned so much from my friend using these. She knows who she is. She'll be listening because she loves you. And she says, maybe this is good news so often. And it has rubbed off on me. And your book actually made me want to go through the steps. I've never really wanted, even though I've been connected to them for so many years and that was their thing. And I was learning from afar from them kind of. But you really convinced me that this is a way to delve very specifically into living out the gospel and the grace of it.
Yes.
So one of the things you said specifically about step 6 and 7 is you basically called it the living heart of the process.
Yes.
Because it's about transformation. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So those 2 steps to remind people, 6 is we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And 7 is humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. It's always sad when you meet Christians who are so effortful. They're just trying so hard. They're striving. They're just striving. And that, I just don't think that's the gospel. I think that's, I think it's well-intentioned, but it's in opposition to the gospel of grace. You are already accepted. I love Paul Tillich when he says, accept that you have been accepted. Right? So it seems to me that so much of the spiritual journey is about learning to love and learning how to be loved. And learning how to be loved is so much harder in my experience than loving, actually. Learning to be absolutely persuaded that we are the objects of God's care, concern, and furious affection. That we are those objects, right? That we are held, that God has not forgotten, that we are supported, that that God is, suppose, bless St. Augustine, right, closer to us than we are to ourselves, that we live and move and have our being in him. He's so close, so close, so close. And when we learn to surrender, to give up, to throw ourselves into the current of grace and just say yes to God in every given moment. I mean, this is where the peace that passes all understanding comes, right? And I'm like everybody else. I go in and out of the stream all day long, right? But I have enough experience now that I can spot it when it's happening. Like I have enough awareness, which I think is so much of. And again, I hope I'm not speaking in too esoteric terms here, but what I would say is that maybe another way to think about the spiritual life is it's about just simply waking up. It's waking up to the fact that the world, everything and everyone is brimming with the presence of God. Everything. And this power is available to us if we relax and allow, right? Consent. And then when we do, so many of these troubling things that we've done in our lives or continue to do begin to fall away on their own naturally, right? It's like grace has just come in and done for you something that you hadn't anticipated. And people go, that sounds too passive. I need to be doing stuff. It's like, okay, well, for me, the doing part really is just showing up every day on my cushion for meditation and just saying yes to God and engaging in practices that really the purpose of them isn't to bring about transformation on my own willpower, but rather to simply open me up to God doing it.
Wondering in connection with this, can you talk a little bit about shame?
How much you want to know?
Is that kind of your thing?
Oh, I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, 2s, 3s, and 4s. We understand shame.
Oh, goodness. Well, I just, you just think about the people who their shame just gets involved here. And especially when you're talking about receiving from God.
Yeah. I hear a lot of, I have clients and this animal called shame. They say to me, how long am I going to be wrestling with this? And I'm always like, I don't know, 30, 40 more years. I don't know. I mean, it's a dog. I mean, it's a tyrant. Shame is this, this kind of tragic byproduct of Adam and Eve stepping out of the garden. It's probably the first emotion that was experienced when they stepped out of the garden, right? Like, and we know this, right? They covered themselves, and they, it's like, and it takes a minute for us to begin to spot shame in its many different disguises as it shows up in life. I will say though that the older I get, the less it has me. The less it has me. And I monitor shame, in my life, and I can feel when it's where it is in my body when it arrives, right? Um, and so I don't have any great recipes for overcoming shame, except that the more time spent in community with God and with others is the only solution I know for it. Which is why, by the way, when you get to step 5, right, admitted to God, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Like, you know what? I was with someone the other day, and he's like, "I'm the worst sinner. I am the worst of all sinners." And I looked at him, I said, "Don't flatter yourself." I said, "You really? Like, don't flatter yourself. I know a lot of people who are a lot worse than you are. And by the way, you are probably worse than you know."
Did he laugh?
Yes, of course he did. I mean, but seriously, these are the kinds of loopy, weird thoughts that people get in their heads, right? Like, I am the worst of all sinners. And I'm like, oh boy.
Right.
Ah, really? So listen, do not be dissuaded that you are loved. Do not be dissuaded that you are loved. This is so important in the spiritual
It
life.
is. It is.
And that you are both. We are mixed. The other thing I always am reminding my clients is, listen, you are a mixed bag. You are both beautiful and beastly. You are a saint and you are a sinner. You are all of the above. But the thing you must remember when you say I'm a sinner, you must say I am a beloved sinner. Beloved sinner. You're not a sinner. You are a beloved sinner. And that's how we just learn to live with the mixed state of things. We live in a mixed state all the time. And so when shame comes up, I try to turn my gaze toward it and smile.
So good. I'm going to use that for myself. Beloved sinner.
Yes. And when I say sinner,
yeah.
And again, I say this in the book, and this is going to drive all the Reformed people crazy.
That's fine.
But but that's okay with me, because I'm an Episcopalian / Catholic. So this is how I sort of see it. I just think I think of sin as like I would about asthma or about diabetes, right? It is ontological, right? It is something that I can't control any more than I can control my blood sugar apart. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, like on my own without help, right? And we have a God who's become human, who's been incarnate, who understands the human journey, this human struggle to become. And and you were saying earlier, oh, this is hard work, these 12 steps. Oh yeah, they're hard work for sure. But listen, it's harder work not to have a plan.
For sure.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
No, it's just willy-nilly. And that's what I love. The 12 steps offer us a plan. Like, how do I deal with this interior world of mine?
Yes.
How do I deal with my relationships? How do I deepen my trust and love for God? How do I repair the rupture I have in my relationship with myself? This is the nutsy, boltsy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'd rather have a plan than no plan, and this is a good plan.
I'm with you. I love that, because I like things to be practical, understandable, doable. There was a group of us families when we had young kids. We would all vacation together, and we would go to these things sometimes, and it was Christian stuff, and it was all great, like information. But all of us together, we just kept saying to each other, "Yes, but how?" And so we actually called ourselves YBH because for that, in that midlife season where kids were young, we had been Christians so long and we had heard so many sermons, and it was welling up from within us. Yes, but how? And so I even have just a bias for that too, which is why I think I loved your book, is you are really saying, yes, here's a how.
Yeah, here's a how. And it's a good, and this particular how, the 12 steps, right?
Yeah.
Has saved and revolutionized and miraculously transformed the lives of tens of millions of people. So we can say that it's evidence-based.
Oh,
right?
100%.
It has proven to bring people peace in their relationship with God, themselves, and others when people practice them, right?
Yes.
And put themselves through this curriculum. And so that's why, there's a workbook, and it's like, go do the work, man.
Yeah.
It's available to you.
Yeah. I want to do that. Well, I told you my friends, she's a self-proclaimed Enneagram 1, and he's a 9.
9. Yeah, I was going to say.
And they're,
they go together a lot.
Isn't that interesting? But they're very different, obviously, because of just all that. But I've seen it work beautifully for both of them. She deals with.
By the way, is it the woman of 1?
Yes.
Is she the identified
No.
Right. So
look at that.
Yeah, I'm yeah. Well,
you're good at this.
Yeah. Well, so what she's working on is letting go in the 12 steps, right? She's worked, I'm assuming, I don't know this, but it's like, I've seen this pattern before, right? The 9s are really good at numbing behavior, right? And of course, that is their defense mechanism, is the narcotization, right? And that could be through food. I mean, watching TV, sex, drinking, drugs, whatever your thing is, or all the above, right?
Right.
Now, that 1 is probably working on issues around control, wanting to control things. And they became very codependent on that 9, trying to fix the 9 when in their worst moments. And then they ran out of ammo.
Right.
And then they show up at Al-Anon, and suddenly they go, oh, this is what I needed, right? It's that learning that loving detachment, learning to allow someone else to live their lives on, and stay on their side of the street, right? Manage their own life.
Yes.
All this sort of stuff. This is just the gospel. This is just good stuff. And that's what the 12 steps teaches.
Yeah. Well, she's been on our podcast before, and she shared this publicly. So I'll bring it up again. Her initial, when she went to a meeting, and there was a woman there who was sharing a story, because you know how people do their shares. And she was sharing the story that was somehow similar enough to her own story and the woman was just calmly telling the story. And she could not believe that the woman was not balled up on the floor in the fetal position.
Yeah.
She couldn't believe it. And this was a turning point for her. Like, how is this woman just talking about it?
Yes. So this is, have you ever wondered to yourself, like, all right, in fact, I'm going to have to change this by doing it myself. But I always wonder to myself, why have I never heard a sermon on equanimity? Meaning, in equanimity, I would define as it's a very spiritual space, right? Equanimity means the ability to maintain emotional balance in the face of whatever life throws at you. Okay? And it may be a picture that would be Jesus asleep on the boat, right? Just like the world's going to hell in a handbasket. What are you doing, right? And Jesus, equanimity, right? It's just this ability to, okay, well, here it is. Life is presenting me with this set of challenges, but I'm not being emotionally and spiritually thrown off the beam, right? And lighting my hair on fire and running around like, a caffeinated madman or madwoman, right? It's this place of centeredness, of groundedness, right? And what she was being amazed at is that this other person sharing their story had done enough healing work through the 12 steps that what she was picking up on was, how is this person not the word in psychology, decompensating, like falling apart, right? And the reason is because they have done the work of mending and deepening and um, uh, organizing properly their relationship with God themselves and others. You know, um, you know, I have a son in recovery. I just was with him in Los Angeles, and he's a beautiful 27-year-old man. And I listened to, we had a very deep conversation. This is so funny. We had a deep conversation in the back of a driverless cab in Los Angeles. We had a 30-minute ride in a driverless cab, right? One of these Waymos, like driving around LA. And it was like, it was such an out of body spiritual moment. I made an amends to my son for something I had done wrong when he was younger. That's step 8 and 9, right? I'm making an amends. And then it was very tender. He received it. He offered his forgiveness to me. And I keep looking at the driver who's not there to make sure that, are you listening to this conversation? Anyway, but he said something so beautiful to me. He goes about his own journey of healing through the steps. He's like, Dad, I'll get choked up saying this. He said, I couldn't have gotten here any other way except through that dark valley. I could not have grown up any other way. And what the steps revealed to me was, working the steps have brought so much healing to my life. And it was such a remarkable conversation. That was a testimony to the steps. And there's an example of what his working his program in that moment, working the steps, created a connection between him and I in that car where we had a common vocabulary of making amends, of sharing deeply about our lives. There was no shame in the car. There's no shame in the car. It's just this, I was able to say to him, I think I failed you here. And I'm sorry. And his response was, it's not your fault that I got here. But look where we are now. I mean, it was like this beautiful altar. There was like a beautiful altar traveling through LA, just on wheels, just a beautiful altar traveling around the streets of LA that nobody knew what was going on in that dang car. It was so beautiful as we were going down the street, including that there was no driver.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation. I've never been in one of those cars, but it's so beautiful. And the 3 words came to my mind when you were sharing that beautiful story with your son. And it's these small, I think they're prepositions, right? With,
yes,
in, and through.
I
love these words these days, right? They're very, very process oriented. And you kept saying earlier, God is with you. You are beloved. I like to say God is not elsewhere. God's not elsewhere. So with God, and in, and your son was saying, and through. I made it here by going through it.
Yes. And the steps gave him a process.
Yes.
They gave him a process of mending things in his life that, because they were unmended, were driving attachments and behaviors and addictions that were destroying him. Because he was trying, and he's a 7, by the way. He's a 7 with a 7 wing. And he just was like, I needed to grow up. No amount of school or therapy or anything was going to do it. I was going to have to go. This was how it was. And he said to me, oh, and this was so beautiful. Again, this is the stuff that 27-year-olds learn in these rooms, right, of recovery. He says, and Dad, I'm right on time.
Yes. Love the slogans. That's another beautiful one.
I'm right on time.
Right on.
Because people will oftentimes say to me in these shamey moments, like, oh, I wish I'd known this 25 years ago. And I go, he's like, nope, I'm right on time. This was the appointed hour to know.
So good. Do you have time for one more question? Wrap this up.
Sure.
So maybe there's a 7-ness in this, but I noticed there was a sentence, a story you shared, and it was the idea of playing the ball where the monkey drops it. I think that's because monkey mind, right? So to my ear, that sounded like the improv game of yes and. So I'm just wondering, can you tell us the story, tell us what that is, and then maybe as a way of closing us out, how can that help people right now? They've listened to this whole conversation. The ball has landed somewhere. How could they move forward?
So I love this story. And by the way, I have done 60 podcasts around this book, like interviews, and you are the first interviewer to bring that story up. And it is one of my favorite stories in the book. And I'm always like, did they actually read that book? Because that's the best story.
The whole book. I'm like, I love that story.
So the story goes like this. In colonial India, when the British were, still ruling, the Brits decided they wanted to build a golf course, which was a very ambitious project to undertake, right, in India. But they were determined, so they built this golf course. And but when they finished, they discovered that there was something they had not baked into their planning, which was the monkeys. So every time someone would tee off and hit a ball, it would land on the fairway and a bunch of monkeys would run out and grab the ball and start throwing it all over the place, right? Or run off with it, right? Now, they did not realize this was going to happen. So they decided, okay, well, we're going to build a wall and that's going to, stop the monkeys. Well, of course, monkeys climb so that didn't work, right? Then they said, all right, well, we're going to capture the monkeys and take them somewhere else, right? And of course, the problem is that there's a lot of monkeys, right? There's a lot of monkeys. So that didn't work. And then I think they took more drastic results, and that didn't work either, right? And so finally, what they did is they decided to write a rule into the club golf rule book, and it says you have to play the ball where the monkey drops it, right? And the reason I love the story is it's a beautiful, actually, metaphor, right? In the spiritual life, in life, we have to play the ball where the monkey drops it. If you wake up if you're given a bad diagnosis tomorrow, you got to play the ball where the monkey dropped it. You get fired from your job, you got to play the ball where the monkey dropped it. You have a relapse, and you got to play the ball where the monkey drops it. Right? You have to. It's another way of maybe saying live life on life's terms. This is what life has presented you with, right? And so the question isn't, we can sit around and stew about it. We can come up with all kinds of crazy ways of dealing with where the monkey dropped the ball. But at the end of the day, you just got to play it where it lands. You know what I mean? And this is also good for people who had very troubled childhoods. I'm always telling people who've had really, really difficult childhoods, I'm like, I'm really sorry that happened. And we got to play the ball where the monkey dropped it. That's just the truth. And we can sit around and wring our hands, but at the end of this, we're going to just have to play where the ball dropped, right? Now, as to what that means for people listening, look, I think life presents us with a very hard curriculum. Life is very difficult. And the sooner you accept it, the happier you're going to be, right? Because as Scott Peck once said, the moment you accept that life is hard, when it's hard, it's no longer, it's just not hard. You've accepted the fact that it's hard. It's already in the calculation, right? But if you would like to, I'm going to say this. If you would like to experience a depth of intimacy with God, yourself, and others that you previously didn't know was available to you, then I encourage you to work the 12 steps. And they will teach you, by the way, how to play every day, how to play the ball, play the ball where the monkey drops it, right? And it will create in you a kind of equanimity, that there's that word again, this ability to move through the world in this place of sort of patient, unhurried trust. Like, oh, so now this, okay. And when those moments of beauty come by, you don't rush by them. So now this, right? And you're able to move at the pace of your soul.
Love it. Oh, what a beautiful way to wrap this up. I do have to circle back though. You said the word acceptance. That's what came to my mind. Playing the ball where the monkey drops it to me even gets at that idea of control. I'm out of control. The monkey's moving all around, but the ball got dropped. I can accept that. And then I think the other thing that emerges for me is agency. I'm not out of control. I can play the ball now where it is. So I do actually have a choice. And I think that feels good.
Yeah, acceptance is a big idea in the 12 steps, right? And acceptance isn't resignation. Resignation is like, I'm resigned, right? It's this open-handedness, this kind of, this is it, right? I accept that this is what it is, right? And there's a beautiful, the Serenity Prayer. People only know the beginning three lines, but the whole Serenity Prayer, I'll just say it for you. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Then it goes on and says, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you in the next.
I would call that a benediction. And
so be it.
And I would say thank you so much, Ian, for your time and your stories and your heart.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on the Unhurried Living Podcast. You can download free resources and learn more about us at unhurriedliving.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'd love it if you'd share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. You'll also find many helpful links in the show notes so you can get to know us better, as well as our partner, Life Audio, and all of their other faith-centered podcasts. Remember, you're making your way forward one small, simple, and gracious step at a time.